Hello, and welcome to the Health Trip Podcast with me, Jill Foose. I'm a functional medicine and integrative nutrition health coach located in downtown Chicago, and I'm the founder of Jill Foose Wellness, a private concierge health coaching business where I work with individuals, groups, and corporations, diving deep into helping folks discover their own unique health equation to optimize their wellness. Join me and my guests as we venture down intriguing, science packed roads, debunking old medical paradigms, perusing new innovative therapies, modalities, and protocols while living our best life. On today's podcast, I welcome my friend and master private chef, Mila Furhman. From a very young age, Mila knew she wanted to be a chef. She attended the Kendall College in Chicago, one of the top 5 culinary schools in the US, where she received her bachelor's from the Culinary and Hospitality School. After working in several restaurants, she's ventured out and opened up her private chef business called Girl in the Kitchen. Besides being a talented private chef, Mila also runs a full service boutique catering business, a food blog, and has appeared on the Food Network competition called Supermarket Stakeout, and I did see that, by the way, CBS, ABC, Fox News, and countless other publications and channels showcasing her amazing recipes and cooking tips. What I respect most about Mila is her deep knowledge of healthy cooking, figuring out an individual's macronutrients and needs, and how to prepare recipes using the cleanest, healthiest ingredients for her clients. She lives in the suburbs of Chicago with her husband and her daughter and son, and she has a great following on social media and such fun stories and information to watch. So, welcome, Mila. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jill. I'm happy to be here.
Me too. I'm really excited to talk about meal prepping, which is the topic for today's podcast. But before we dive into that, I do want to just give a little bit of a medical disclaimer that we are not doctors. And so any information you hear here, and hopefully you have some nice nuggets to take away, absolutely have a conversation with your primary care physician if something like this, changing some kind of dietary style or adding in different types of nutrition, is something that is good for you. So you always want to check in with your doc. All right. So today we're talking about all things healthy meal prepping. So I found out some really interesting information on the internet. So meal prepping has been around for over 20 years. And if you Google the term meal prep, it first started showing up in 2013. Since then, it's become more and more popular as a way to enhance someone's health journey, save money and time, and add in a variety of fresh ingredients to someone's busy week. The first at home meal prep kit was developed in Sweden in 2007. And since then, the meal kit industry has grown to be a multi-billion-dollar business, which is mind blowing to me. There's now over 150 meal kit companies in the US and hundreds more overseas. In 2017, there was an observational study done in France that looked at 40,000 adults and found that people who meal prepped at least a few days at a time were less likely to be overweight and stuck more closely to their nutritional guidelines. And this morning on a clubhouse meeting for health coaches, one of the moderators shared with me that over 50 million people are now suffering from type 2 diabetes in the United States. It's just, that's another mind blowing fact to me because we know that type 2 diabetes is brought on by a poor diet and lifestyle and can be completely reversed. Americans are busy, busy people, and we all have a hard time slowing down, making sure that we're incorporating self-care practices such as feeding ourselves and our family healthy, nutrient-dense meals. This is crazy. The snack food production industry will bring in $45.8 billion in 2021 and is estimated to grow another 4.3% this year. Snacks are formulated to wire us to crave sugar and salt all day, and it's not the healthy mineral-rich salt that we need. Our brains are literally being hijacked every day by these huge food manufacturers. So as a health coach, I absolutely love the idea of meal prepping. However, before you dive into meal prepping, there are some really important things to know and how to keep it clean and healthy. And that's why I have Mila here. She is just an amazing professional recipe builder and caterer and has some amazing cooking tips for the at-home cook. So Mila, thank you again. And before we talk about meal prepping, I want to know a little bit of backstory about you, how you came to jump on this journey, this journey of being a private chef and creating your boutique catering company.
So I think that it was really, really instilled in me to eat healthily since I was a kid. I mean, my parents were I was born here. I was born in Moldova, which is the former USSR. And Jill, hang on one second. I'm sorry, I can't talk. Just call Mark. It's fine. I'm so sorry.
It's
I'm gonna
okay.
start again. So I was born in the former USSR. I was born in Moldova, and I think because of the way that I was raised, I basically always ate seasonal, right? So like there was no, you can't have a tomato in January. Like that doesn't exist. And I kind of grew up knowing that. But also I should say I was the worst eater ever as a kid. Like I was horrible. I ate like Jewish chicken soup every day, all the time with meat, with the skin on, which I know you're a huge fan of.
Oh
And
yeah.
that was it. And so I always knew that going to culinary school was kind of inevitable. I fought it for a really long time. Lost my mom when I was 19, and her dying wish literally was for me to go to culinary school. I went to culinary school, loved it. It was easily the best and the most difficult thing I've ever done. I graduated with a culinary degree, like you said, and also a restaurant hospitality management degree. And so I actually did not do culinary for a really long time. I did front of the house. So I did a lot of management. I did a lot of event sales, event organizing. I was an event planner for many years, and that's what I wanted to do. And then my emotional strings started pulling at me, and I just really wanted to just talk about food, write about food, and create food. I started a silly little blog in 2007. It was called Kiss. No intentions of going big, just wanted to share stories that really were close to my heart and food. And it was mostly the food that my mom and my grandma made when I was a kid. And then fast forward to when I was pregnant with or rather, I just had my first. I started Girl in the Kitchen, the blog, with again, just an intention of, you know what, I think I could do something cool with this. Like my goal was to use my blog as a stepping stone to build a way bigger career while being in a corporate world, 9 to 5 job. I got pregnant with my second baby in 2017 and said, screw this. I never want to work for anybody again. And I just decided to be a full-time blogger. Private chefing was never on the horizon. I would do
Hmm.
catering parties here and there as request. Because I'm Russian, I developed a pretty big following already locally. And so they'd always ask me, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. It just, wasn't there. And then I remember May of 2017, I was on my own for 5 months at that point, and my husband and somebody came up to me and said, "Listen, we want you to meal prep. I have twins, and two other kids, and by the way, I have one on the way. So I have a family of 5, and I need a meal prep." And I told my husband, I'm like, "I don't want to do this. I don't want to be somebody's like slave." He's like, "What are you nuts?" He's like, "You watch the housewives of every county. They all have a private chef." He's like, "That's what you're going to be." So my husband sold me on the idea by basically convincing me that I'll be servicing the housewives of Beverly Hills. And I started with one client May 1st, and by Memorial Day at 7, I was 5 months pregnant. And I just started growing and, cooking wholesome meals. It was never like a low carb thing or a carnivore thing or a vegan thing, right? I just wanted to feed people the way I fed my family and the way my mom fed us. And
Right.
that was, you cook once or twice a week and you're good for the week. And for me, that's meal prep. I think people have the idea of meal prep as like these individual little containers. And for me, meal
Right.
prep is just prepping your meals for the week, whether it's family style or individual. It doesn't matter, right?
Right.
And it was actually really interesting because that kind of mentality is very prevalent in Europeans and in Russians and like in a lot of other cultures. But in American culture, the thought of not having a freshly made dinner that night, every single night, was very, very jarring. I had to convince them, like, sanitary issues and your food's going to be fine, your meat's going to last, your veggies, if you cook them the right way, they're going to reheat fine. So there was definitely a learning curve for my clients, but it was really interesting because even my chefs were like, are you sure this is going to work? And I'm like, it's going to work because people are going to start seeing how easy it was. And then my wholesome lifestyle kind of started evolving in like 2018 to keto low carb. Now I've been like, privy of keto low carb for years, but I wasn't feeling well. I had a lot of inflammation. My joints were aching. I was 10 months postpartum, still nursing. So I knew I couldn't diet a lot because every time I diet when I nursed, I would lose all my milk. And I just said I needed to do something. And I listened to a podcast and he convinced me to do low carb, high fat, basically keto. And I indulged. Oh, Jill, I had the best time ever. Everything had heavy cream on it. No fat was spared. Chicken skin. Oh my God. Like every piece of chicken had tons of skin. Like I loved my lifestyle. But as soon as I kind of, the inflammation went away rather quickly, I would say within 20 to 30 days, I noticed that my joints weren't aching anymore. And you could see my face started like getting a little bit more svelte. I wasn't really losing weight. I had about 20 pounds to go, and I lost like 6 pounds in 4 months. And I didn't understand what was happening. And then I slowly started understanding that I had to cut down the fat a little bit for my body type because I was just overdoing it. So I cut out a lot of the heavy cream except my morning coffee, but I still had my high fat meats, lots of vegetables, did intermittent fasting, which worked really well. And then I would post this on my stories, and all my clients follow me. So they're like, what are you doing? I want to know about keto. I want to know what's happening. And so I slowly started teaching my clients that you don't have to be perfect, but let's start removing that pasta. Let's start removing that rice. And like the thing I would say is like, if it's coming from the ground and it's not processed, I'm okay with it. So if you want to have root veggies, if you want to have like real potatoes, not frozen, if you want to have sweet potatoes, not frozen, let's give you that. But let's minimize it to once a week. Let's give you that carb once a week. And if you want to have dessert, let's figure out a way you're going to enjoy it. Right. And so that kind of just evolved into me playing around with paleo for myself and my clients, carnivore. You and I have talked about carnivore many times. And just finding what works for me. And I kind of try and do the same thing with my clients. And if I can't figure it out, I just shoot them to you.
And that's, so we do share clients, and that's one of the things I really respect about you, that you have your own personal experience about eating all these different ways so that you can share that style. So you get the language when it comes to working with my clients and your own clients. So I think that's great. I also, love that you said there's different ideas of meal prepping, that meal prepping is not just lining up 7 purple boxes, 7 orange boxes, and 7 black boxes for, a whole week. That, I raised 5 kids. So I firsthand know that meal prepping looks, a lot like what you're talking about, making a lot of something that's going to be useful in different ways throughout the week. Because with 5 kids and going all over the country for hockey, you don't have time to make fresh meals all the time. So you do your best. And it does require thinking, planning, having the right tools, which we're going to talk about all of this stuff. And you really have to be mindful about how you're preparing the food so that it can be reheated for the next day or two, or whatever you want. So when you think about meal prepping, what are the most important questions to ask yourself before starting? So like in health coaching, when I get a new client, we talk about the why factor. Why do you want to start on this health journey? What is it? Are you overweight and you need to lose weight because you can't even bend down to tie your own shoes? Are you expecting a grandchild and you can't even walk down the driveway comfortably without huffing and puffing? What is your why? What is it with meal prepping?
So I think it's twofold, right? So I think the first question is, what do you expect to get out of this? That's very important. The next question is, what are your goals? And so if they say, 90% of the time, Joe, the goal is weight loss, 90% of the time. And that's when I actually start the discovery process of what can you live without? And then they're like, well, I really love food. And I say, can you live without carbs? And they just kind of like, I don't want, I'm like, okay, but if you want to lose weight, like I'm very much like you in the sense that I am genuine and sensitive and I listen, I'm empathetic, but I'm also intense. Like if you want to lose weight, you know what you got to do, right? There's like, you either count your calories, count your macros, or get rid of something. Like that's it. Like a bad diet, you can never outrun a bad diet, right? So like you can do all the cardio in the world. If you eat like crap, you're going to look like crap. You're going to feel like crap. Right. And so that's kind of when I get into deciding, okay, so you want to lose weight. How do you feel about keto? I love keto. I think I can do it. Great. Let me redefine healthy keto for you. And I really try and redefine it. I have nothing against dairy, but I also tell them dairy can stall your progress. So that's when we start redefining. And once I kind of understand what they're going for, that's when I say to them, okay, so this is how our meal prep looks like. It comes in family style, blah, 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 this and that. And the biggest difference between what I do and between everybody else does, which is why I call us boutique, is because we are, excuse me, 100% custom. My clients and I have 1 hour FaceTimes. They used to be in person. Excuse me. And we go through, what proteins do you like? What proteins don't you like? What vegetables, what spices, what herbs, what irritates you, what doesn't irritate you? Obviously, allergy sensitivity. Every single one of my clients is custom. And that's exactly why I have 7 different chefs, because they can give that time to our clients. And I've always said I would rather make less profit in the end and have the same exact custom model. So the model that I started with on day one is the same model now 4 years later. And that customization factor will then evolve over time, right? Again, like if they're doing keto and dairy is starting to bother them, we're going to take away that dairy, right? Or vice versa. If they're doing really well and they want to go full carnivore, we incorporate that. Or, you know, if their kids need more vegetables, or like you said,
Right.
if your kids are a ton, you 4 teenagers and they're all athletes, sometimes they need that carb, you know?
Absolutely.
And I'm all about that, as long as it's like a good, healthy carb, but not crappy French fries, right?
Right. So then there's two types of folks here. There's the folks that want you to do the meal prepping for them, and it's like buying a meal kit. It's just you. And then there's the other folks who want to learn how to do this on their own. So for the folks who really want to learn how to do this on their own, how do they start thinking about meal prepping? What are those steps to take? So they know their why, they have their health reasons why they're going to change the way they eat, why they want to get on board with meal prepping. But what are the next steps to take?
I think if you're doing this on your own,
Yeah.
and by the way, I have a course that teaches a home cook how to cook, like period, the end, just the basics from a chef to a home cook. So I always tell them, take that step. And then the next step is, it's really, really important. Be realistic. Like, are you going to want to eat your salmon on day 3? Because I don't want to eat salmon on day 3. I want to eat salmon only on day 1. Okay, that's me.
Right.
Are you going to want to eat broccoli for 7 days? Or do you need to make 3 separate veg for yourself? Are you going to want to roast that broccoli, even though it's cut up? Are you going to want to roast that broccoli at the end of a crazy work day when you've been on Zoom calls all day and your kids are driving you crazy and all you want to do is have a burger? Are you going to want to warm up, you know, not even warm, just roast that broccoli? What are the things that you're going to have to do to make you successful? And so for me, it's always really easy. I always go for whatever protein I have in the kitchen with whatever green. Sometimes I don't even do a green. I do protein on protein crime all the time. I do a chicken thigh with a boiled egg and call it a day many times out of the week. I say that in addition to that, I find, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, I find when I'm trying to be just like really good and clean, and like when I'm trying to slim down, simplicity for me wins every time, every single time. The funniest thing is whenever anybody asks me, well, what did you have for dinner? And I tell them, they're like, well, that's not anything exciting. And I'm like, yeah, this is my job. Like, I cook all day. When I come home, I throw a piece of salmon in the oven with a little bit of soy sauce, some lemon juice, and some garlic powder. And then I do whatever green vegetable on the side. And that's what the whole family eats, including my 3.5-year-old and my 8-year-old and my husband, right? That's what we
Right.
eat. And 90% of the time, especially now in Chicago, it's grilling time, right? It's like right now, my husband has barbecue ribs on the smoker, which is for dinner tonight. Last night we had ribeyes with a salad. And so every single night it's something different, but it's that same idea. It's protein and a vegetable. Protein, don't freaking complicate it. I say that.
Right. But what I'm referring to are the people at home who want to cook and put it in their containers or have it in a bulk container.
Yep.
Are there, let's talk about meats because you're talking about animal protein. And salmon is a great place to start because nobody wants to eat fish 2 or 3 days out, right? So let's say someone's there's a guy at home right now listening and he really wants to, become more healthy and be more prepared and have these meal prep options for him. Is the first step figuring out which proteins and how much protein he's going to need for the week, the grocery store list? Is it the recipes? So break down how long proteins last when they're cooked. And if you want a variety, what's the best way to go about that?
I love that question. Okay, so here's what I would say. Let's say there's this guy who wants salmon, right? First thing is first, I would say they need to talk to somebody like you, or they need to figure out what their macros are, just from a very basic thing. Like, just so if you've never meal prepped, you really don't know what portion sizes are. Let's be honest, because it's one of the other obesity issues in America, right? Our portion sizes are extravagant. So like when it comes to fish or lean or even lean proteins, a guy can have like 7 to 8 ounces of protein easily, right? I mean, that's a given.
Yeah.
Right. Easily. So when you're doing something like that, I would say, okay, so sit down on your Saturday or your Friday. Okay. Sit down on Friday, plan out what you want to do. And if you're really struggling with planning, go on Pinterest and you literally type in keto proteins and you're going to have 90 million different selections, right? So start planning your menu. And like you said, well, what if I don't want to eat the salmon I cooked on Monday on Wednesday? So what you do is you marinate your salmon. Okay. So simple. Like I said, soy sauce, lemon juice, olive oil, garlic powder. Boom. Marinate the portions and freeze the portions that you want to eat Thursday or Friday. Freeze it. And then you could either throw it on the grill. Now, again, we're being super simple. You can also make every single piece of salmon a different flavor. I'm trying to go the simplest route possible.
Let's keep it really simple. Yeah.
Yeah. So you would then basically end up seasoning it, saving yourself the Monday salmon that you're going to cook the next day. Because I always say your seafood is going to take 10 minutes on broil or on a high convection oven to cook, right? Everybody has that time to throw it in the oven. Everybody does, especially if you're doing it in Pyrex, if you're doing your meal prep in Pyrex. And then after that, figure out your veggies. Okay, what are the 5 veggies I'm going to eat this week? I'm going to make myself a salad on Monday. On Tuesday, I'm going to do broccoli. On Wednesday, I'm going to do cauliflower. On Thursday, I'm going to do these awesome frozen grilled vegetables from Trader Joe's. And on Friday, I'm going to do a big frittata of everything I've left over. And so when you do that, I always say that Fridays dinners are for leftovers and Saturday mornings are for brunches, right? Right. I see no shame in the game, by the way, with the frittata being for dinner, because it's like the best way to use it. Yeah, it's like the best way to use everything up. And so it kind of brings me back to what I was saying before. Plan your meals, but especially in the very beginning, truly simple is key, because then you're not going to get overwhelmed. And the reason that everybody quits meal prepping is because they get overwhelmed and or bored, right? So if you constantly keep things in rotation, and if you can't eat broccoli and salmon every single week, that's okay. Change things up around. Have some halibut, have some swordfish, have some mahi tacos.
Wait, I want to ask a question. When you said to freeze, so let's say someone goes to Costco and they buy one of those huge wild caught pieces of salmon, right? They can cut it into the portion sizes that they need, and then they marinate it, freeze it. And then at what point do they take it out of the freezer when they know they want to have it? Like, let's say they do all that prepping on Sunday, but Wednesday they want to have it. When do they need to take that salmon out?
So you want to take it out Tuesday night.
Oh, okay. So you really have to be organized here.
You do. That's what I'm saying. So either you're okay with being super simple. And I think the other thing that I will tell you is that while salmon is super, it lends itself to varieties. Not everybody wants to eat fish that often, right? So I always say have grilled chicken thighs or grilled chicken breast as part of your menu item all the time, and in your freezer, marinated. There's lots of proteins that lend themselves really well to being frozen and marinated. Almost any steak. So right now in my freezer, I have flank steak that's marinated and skirt steak that's marinated. And all I have to do is defrost it and throw it on the grill, right? Same with chicken breast, same with chicken thighs. Those bone in, boneless, doesn't matter. They lend themselves really, really well to being marinated and frozen. And if you freeze them well, you're not going to have to worry about freezer burn. And so when you have things like that, you're always going to be prepared. Even like let's say you're going out of town for the weekend. Let's say you're leaving Thursday, you're coming back Sunday, and all of a sudden you're like, crap, I forgot to meal prep. Crap. So in your freezer, you have chicken breast, you have chicken thighs, you have steak. So all you have to do is just, put any vegetable on the plate, even tomatoes and cucumbers.
I really like this idea. You're not just thinking about meal prepping for each day of the week, but for emergency situations.
For rainy days. Yes.
Exactly. I love that. So my two of my boys, they're all athletes, but two of my boys really took to meal prepping years ago when they were in high school. And one of the older ones taught the youngest one, and they would do sheet pans, and they didn't want any advice from me, right? They went online, they YouTubed all these athletic trainers.
They Pinterested everything.
Totally, right? And they figured it out on their own, and they would do huge sheet pans of chicken breasts, tons of broccoli, sweet potatoes. So their idea was cooking everything first, and putting it in their containers, right? Like what we really think about meal prepping, and they'd stack it up in the fridge, and they would have, lunches and dinners every night for like 5 nights. But I got to tell you, by night 4, I'd see them eating their chicken, and they'd be like, oh, Mom, what are you making for dinner?
Yeah, it's true, right? Because you get sick of it. And especially, let's be frank,
and it dries out.
Yes. Yeah. Plain chicken breast is not only boring, but dry.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the other thing I will tell you, like one little cooking tip. If you're cooking, like let's say you're doing what your sons were doing and you're cooking everything, right? Cook your protein to 3/4 of the way. So if your chicken has to be done at 165 degrees, cook it to like 130. Okay. Because then when you're warming it up, you're not killing it.
What is the best way to reheat something up like that?
In the oven or on the pan. Yeah. The other thing that I'll tell you, like really, really, really good tip.
Not the microwave.
Not the microwave.
Okay.
Air fryers. Air fryers are fantastic for reheating. We never had an air fryer until my husband bought a gift for somebody. And then he's like, why don't we have an air fryer? And I'm like, we have a convection oven. I don't need an air fryer. Long story short, he won. I have an air fryer. And we use it to reheat everything.
That's a great idea. That's
a
great idea.
Because you think about it, an air fryer, guys, for those of you that don't know, this isn't a magic like appliance. An air fryer is a mini convection oven. That's it. So it's great for like apartments. It's great for singles. Oh my God. And by the way, you can get a really great one at Costco. It's $50. I just bought it to have for my car in case I go to an event that an oven doesn't work or something. And it's fantastic. It's $50. It worked great. It looks like a little spaceship. It's super cute. And I will tell you the biggest thing that I can tell anybody is always make extra and stick it in the freezer. Yeah. Always, no matter what you do, whether you're making meatballs, whether you're making soup, you will always utilize it. I still do that because I love cooking in bulk. It's just, it's just the way my mom did it. And it kind of like translated into my career. So when you cook in bulk, you just take 1/4 of it and throw it in the freezer for a rainy day. Before you know it, you have an entire freezer stash for, again, those Friday nights. You're like, oh crap, I don't want to have that chicken again. It's gross, right?
Right.
And then you pull out like, oh, I have buffalo chicken meatballs tonight. Yay. Right. So it's like, just be smart about what you're doing and don't overthink it, but just plan it.
I got to tell you, all my 5 kids are out of the house, right? And for me to go from feeding a small army to just myself, I get excited to feed my dogs because they're the only ones I have left to feed, right? But I still make a lot of food at a time and then throw it in the freezer for myself. And it's great on a long day or a day where I'm just tired, don't feel like cooking. It's amazing to have that option just waiting for me with all that freshness. But I want to talk about for the viewers or for the listeners, in terms of if they were to cook all of their meat, chicken, or whatever protein they have, if they were to cook that fully, how long will those last in the fridge? If someone just does that really simple, basic meal prepping, they cook everything, throw it in the fridge, do we need to be concerned about mold issues on the food?
All right, here's the deal. This is my non-sanitary advice, but if it smells fine, It is fine. I mean, 90% of the time. Unless it's salmonella, which by the way, salmonella, like you don't know if your food has it. Okay, like that's kind of,
Right.
or like E. coli. You just don't know if your food has it. So my whole thing is, I mean, I've had proteins in the fridge for 10 days. Like it sounds crazy, but I have, and they were fine. Would I eat them? Probably. It just happened that they were there and I didn't die when I ate them. They didn't taste as good, but I didn't die. It wasn't like unhealthy. I would say for the average person, you should really just count on 4 to 7 days max. Fish and seafood have a way shorter shelf life, not only in the terms of sanitary, but also in terms of like, you don't want to eat like
Yes. Agreed.
7 day old fish. It doesn't have the same taste. And that's why I
Right.
always say I'll just give your like listeners a really good tip. If you want like a gadget that really helps, the sous vide machines, which people
Mm.
are either all about or they know nothing about. So sous vide cooking, I'm not going to tell you guys the real thing. You can Google it, but sous vide cooking is in vacuum cooking. It's what high-end restaurants used to do for years. And now it is the commercial setting has been brought to the home cook. It's
Yep.
a little wand. You put your food that you marinate in a Ziploc or a vacuum seal bag. You put it in water. You put the little wand in it. You set the perfect temperature, and your meat will never be overcooked. I personally love it for seafood more than meat, even. And it's a great way to like make sure your chicken breast is perfectly moist.
So
It'll never overcook.
are you saying when you cook with a sous vide style that helps your meat last longer in the fridge?
No, it helps. It preserves your food, your quality of your food, and it'll never overcook it. That's the thing. So
Mm.
I find the biggest thing, Jill, that everybody tells me is, why is your chicken breast so delicious? They say to me.
Mm.
I'm like, I don't know. Like I grilled it and I marinated it. It's just balsamic on it, for instance, right? They're like, no, there's something, it's really juicy. I'm like, oh, you mean I didn't overcook it? Because I don't take it out at 185 degrees, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's something really important. So people who are afraid of overcooking their proteins, number one, either get a meat probe and like
Mm.
cook with a meat thermometer until you really understand. There's no shame in that game, by the way.
Mm.
Or get a sous vide. And seriously, it's worth its weight in gold if you know how to use it. And if your listeners want to DM me for tips, feel free. I'm happy to chat about
Yeah,
sous
that's a
vide all
great
day long.
idea. That's a great idea. How important are the containers we store our meal prepped food in? There's so many serious health issues because of environmental toxins. And when we
Mm-hmm.
put hot food in plastic containers, all of those chemicals are leaching into your awesome, beautiful food that you just made. And now they're going to end up in your gut and then in your bloodstream and cause a lot of disruption in your endocrine system, which is your hormones.
It's interesting you say that because I didn't think about that for like a really long time. I thought like hippy dippies were just talking about that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think as I kind of evolved my personal health journey, I'm like, well, maybe this stuff's important and glass looks better in the fridge anyhow. So
Mm-hmm.
I personally do store, I would say 90% of my stuff in glass. However, if I do store it in plastic, it never goes in there hot. uh, that's like not a green thing. That's just like something I've never done. And you don't warm up in plastic, like period, the end. You just should never heat up in plastic, especially if you're doing the microwave. If you must, don't heat up in plastic, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
As a company, we offer our clients the ability to get glass containers. Like we buy 2 sets of glass containers, and when we drop off their food, we can pick up the containers.
Mm.
When we were cooking in-house at clients pre-COVID, we were able to use their own containers, so we didn't need to
Mm-hmm.
use plastic. And I encourage them, but if they don't want to, they want a convenience factor, I just say, we don't encourage our clients to heat up their food in the microwave either way. So if we
Right.
don't encourage that, it automatically is a given that please, don't warm up plastic. Like, let's just get away from
Absolutely.
that.
Right. I mean, there's other options you can get as far as storage goes. You can get those little steel containers, which are super cute
Yes.
too. Right. There's the
Yes.
glass, and then there's ceramics, and there's bamboo,
Mm-hmm.
which are
Yeah.
all sustainable um, materials. So I like
Right.
those ideas. What types of costs are we looking at? Like what should someone be spending when they're meal prepping for, let's say, Monday through Friday? For
So when
those.
they're doing it on their own, you're saying, right?
Yes.
So it really depends. It depends, meaning how many varieties are you doing and how high end are your proteins? Because we all know that's where your costs are, right? If you have grass-fed meats and organic everything and wild fish, and what I always say is put your money as far as it'll take you. So if you can't afford grass-fed, but you're already eating better than everybody else, then that's where your money's going to take you. And that's
Yep.
okay. Like, that's not a
Totally.
bad thing.
Yes.
I think that's like really, really important, because a lot of carnivores are like grass fed everything and we
Right.
only need wild game, and like, but not everybody has access or can afford that.
Absolutely.
So do as much as your money can take you. I think taste wise, just so you guys know, the biggest thing is like, I like really high quality eggs. Like Vital Farms is really good. And then there's a brand called Happy Eggs, but
I just got those.
The blue ones, not the yellow ones.
Yeah, they're delicious.
The amber yolks. Oh
yes.
My God. If
delicious.
You guys can get they're amazing. So I would say you're looking anywhere between, for a single person, like between 100 to 120 bucks. I mean, honestly, it's
For
not that
Monday
much.
through Friday.
Monday through Friday, because if you're a woman, if you're a man, I would probably say you're going to be a little higher, because you're going to be like closer to 150 to 200. But if you're really smart about it, if you do your planning and you buy in bulk, you buy at Costco, you buy all your salmon at Costco, you buy all your skirt steak or all your ribeyes.
Costco's great. They've got super high quality, tons of organic and sustainable
grass-fed.
options.
They have grass-fed beef. They have grass-fed bison, which we love. We love bison even more. So I would say you need to think of it in a very different way, right? And like, you can walk into that giant cooler in Costco and get all your veggies, like right there, and get all your berries right there. And so, and by the way, there's no shame in frozen vegetables either. I use frozen vegetables all the time.
Agreed.
The only caveat is, I would say, like, if you're roasting frozen vegetables, you're just not going to get that crispness. But like, my creamy cauliflower, I make out of frozen cut up cauliflower. Like, I would say for the average person who wants to meal prep, your biggest asset to your health is going to be gaining time and spending time, right? So like, it sounds kind of silly, but yes, you're going to be putting in that time to meal prep. But think about how much time you're saving of like, oh shoot, what are we going to eat today? Where are we going for dinner? What are we doing this? And also, once you've done this once or twice, you realize what the shortcuts are, right? So like, if you're going to have, let's say, I don't know, steak fajitas one night. So you realize you can get those sliced up peppers frozen at Trader Joe's for like $1 or $1.50, something like that, right?
Right.
You realize these little shortcuts, and you realize, okay, so it's not going to affect the flavor. It's not going to affect like the cost in a negative way, but it's going to save me time. And a lot of grocery stores also have cut up veggies, which take them, Trader Joe's and Whole Foods have the little, the cute little baby carrots, like the long ones.
Yeah.
And they're already peeled and they're so tender, and just saute them in a little bit of butter and they're delicious. Like, take that and go with it. Take all the shortcuts you can that aren't going to ruin your food or aren't going to like compromise the quality of your food. I would say that number
health.
one. Or 100%, or your health, of course. That goes and be creative. You can use lots of sauces. I would say don't buy store-bought sauces unless you know what's on that label. I mean, Jill, you and I talk about this all the time. The biggest like hidden killer is the oils, right?
Absolutely. All those rancid seed oils.
Yes, that causes you as much inflammation as dairy, if not worse, because it's like that hidden silent killer, right? So I always just tell my clients that a balsamic and soy vinaigrette is going to take you so much farther than any of those crappy gluten and sugar loaded sauces at the grocery store.
Absolutely. Yeah. You have to make a commitment to your health. And if this is part of the journey, it might be a struggle the first few weeks, just getting your feet wet, figuring out all the shortcuts, like you're saying, figuring out what recipes are easy for you to make, figuring out what lasts the longest in the fridge, what you're enjoying the most, right? And it just, you have to be committed and you have to be patient for yourself to be on this journey and make these changes, because it's not easy. It's really not
No.
easy. You have to be prepared, you have to plan, you have to think, you have to be mindful, all these things. But at the end of the day, you are always going to be ahead of the game by not eating in restaurants that saute and cook everything in rancid seed oils. What are the top 3 foods or ingredients that everyone should have in their meal prepping rotation?
Ugh, this is tough.
Mhm.
Okay. Number one, a really good olive oil. That's going to
Mm,
take you really far. By the way, guys, really good olive oils don't have to be expensive, but you need to look on the back because sometimes you'll see like an olive oil that's for sale for like $6.99, and you look below and the fine print says mixed with safflower oil, canola
yep.
oil, like,
Yep.
grapeseed oil. You don't want that. Like,
Hmm.
no, none of that. A really, really good olive oil, lots of lemons. I'm known as the lemon queen, and garlic. And I think just that. You can marinate literally everything in that.
Yeah, those are great
Done.
options. I got a question about the olive oil though. So for olive oil, is there an olive oil you should cook with and then another olive oil you should keep for just finishing?
I knew you
Finishing
were
by
gonna
meaning, yeah, like, so for
a
those of the listeners,
dressing.
yeah, for exactly, it's just a drizzle on your roasted veggies or a drizzle on your fish, whatever it is, but it's not cooked.
I knew you were gonna say that. Okay, so here's the deal. Because this is such a big question. I knew it was coming.
Mhm.
So the reason that this is kind of a gray area is because, as we know, once you heat up olive oil or any oil to any point, you basically break the smoke point. And
Right,
by doing that, allegedly, there's toxins and it's not good for you and it's carcinogenic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
right.
I believe in that in some scenarios. So in terms of finishing oils, what Jill is talking about is those like really delicious, fruity, fragrant olive oils, like the ones that you see like drizzled on top of soups, or you see like even like what you're dipping your bread into in an Italian restaurant. It has to be like one of
Mhm.
those bright green olive oils, right? So I leave those for drizzling and finishing only because they have a really, really intense flavor. And you kind of don't want that. But you want to use like an everyday olive oil. Here's what I'm gonna say. The Mediterranean has been using olive oil for everything, including frying, for centuries. And they have a lot of centurions. And so I say if they're okay with it, I'm okay with it. But if
Mhm.
you want to be safe, use an avocado oil. Coconut oil is going to give you way too much flavor. So if you want to be safe and you want to go neutral, use an avocado oil. Olive oils are good for like sauteing, pan frying. If you're going to be like searing or doing anything on a super, super high heat, I would switch to ghee, which is clarified butter,
Mhm.
avocado oil, or coconut
Animal
oil.
fat
Those
or
are,
animal fats like lards.
or tallow or lard.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right. And before we end, what are your top 3 favorite recipes for meal prepping?
Mm.
And by the way, folks, I am in the show notes while you're thinking about that, Mila. In the show notes, I will list all of Mila's information where you can see her recipes and her. Do you have a YouTube?
I do a YouTube, but I'm more active on Instagram and TikTok
Okay. Yeah,
actually.
we'll put everything on there. So, what are your 3 top favorite recipes? And they can be your recipes too.
Okay. So I have this really incredible skirt steak marinade, but it could be any marinade, and I call it the trifecta. So it's a balsamic, soy, and Dijon. That's like your
Mm,
trifecta. And then you could
mm,
add anything to it. And so the cool thing is, the reason I love this and I teach this recipe is because you can change the ethnicity of the recipe depending on which ingredient you add more of, right? So like if you add more soy, it's going to be kind of an Asian inspired. If you add more balsamic, it's going to be like a Mediterranean inspired. And why I love that trifecta as a base is because it creates that ideal umami flavor that like when you
mm.
eat it, like your tongue
Yeah.
salivates, you know? And that combination is that magic combo between balsamic, soy, and
Mm.
Dijon. So, and you can add anything else to it, but just do that. And I promise
Mhm.
you, it's like the best. I just did it today. Add some bourbon to it. It's good too.
Yum.
My second one, this is gonna sound so silly, but it's like I make this wood plank salmon and it's the easiest thing in the world. And so obviously I soak the wood, blah, blah, blah. And then I just take salmon and I put a ton of soy sauce on it, a ton of lemon juice, lemon zest, really good garlic powder. And the reason I use garlic powder is because I broil my salmon at the end and I don't want that garlic to burn.
Mm.
And I then slice lemons and just put it right on top because I want them to char because it's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
And that's it. And the most important ingredient is time. Like if you're roasting at like 450, 475, you don't go over 12 minutes.
Mhm.
That's really like that's your cutoff time. Um, the third one is probably, oh God, what's my favorite thing to do? I make these cilantro lime shrimp. And I sous vide them and I make like giant prawns. And I just sous vide them and it's a ton of cilantro, lime zest, lime juice, olive oil, cumin. Um, Sometimes I put cardamom seeds in there and it's just like a pop of flavor. And of course, butter. I mean, duh. I sous vide it in that and I don't even finish it on the stove on the skillet. I have my clients finish it really quickly just to flash fry it
Mm.
and that's it. And it's super, super delicious. And the best part is you can eat it on its own. You can eat it in a taco, like either you're doing like a
Mhm.
cassava tortilla or like a lettuce wrap tortilla. Super, super versatile and freezer friendly before you cook it as well. So
Yeah, I was going to
I
ask
like,
you, when you're sous vide, can you um prepare everything and throw these packets of the prepared shrimp in your freezer, and then when you're ready, just take it out the night before?
you can. My only thing is what I would do is if you're going to plan on sous vide cooking, then what you do is you prepare everything. Again, same idea. You marinate everything and then you throw it in your freezer. And when you go to sous vide it, your sous vide can run all day because majority of them run on an app on your phone
Mhm.
and you can set it and leave. And
Mm.
so it asks you if your food is fresh or frozen because it'll adjust that time. And even if let's say like your shrimp is frozen, so it's going to take, I don't even remember, like 60 to 90 minutes, let's just say, and you leave it for 7 hours, nothing's going to happen to it. That's the cool thing. It'll just stay at that perfect temperature the whole
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Though more water is going to come out of it, but it's not going to affect the flavor or the texture, which is the most important thing anyhow.
I have to say that kitchen gadgets these days are so primed for meal prepping with
Hmm.
all of the apps on your phone. And it's just
Hmm.
so much easier than it was, 3 to 5 years ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we all want to save money, we all want to save time, and we all want to live really healthy lives. And this has been such a great conversation about meal prepping. I know so many people would probably rather have you do it for them. I know I would, but cooking's fun and prepping is fun. And there's something
Hmm.
very relaxing about it. Some people like folding laundry. I like prepping food. And
Same.
once you get over the hump of the newness and it being a little bit of a struggle in the beginning, you sort of just slide into this mindfulness space.
This
And
groove.
totally. And it's really lovely. And making the food for yourself is great. Feeding your friends when they come over, your family, this healthy prepped food is amazing. So I hope everybody out there got some nuggets to take away. I will have this up on YouTube and on my podcast. And all the details of in the notes will have Mila's contact information if you're interested in working with her or getting a consultation or just looking at all of her amazing recipes. I, by the way, made her famous chicken soup and I made it over Passover. And there was a step in there that I texted you about. I was like, wait, what do you mean about throwing out the first run of the soup broth and then refilling the pot to cook again? And I got to say, I was scared. I hesitated, but I followed your directions and it was the best freaking broth I ever had in my life.
So I will tell you just like really quickly, that was the soup is my grandma's soup, but that technique is an Asian technique. And my father-in-law did it, who's Ukrainian. So weird. But
Yeah.
he was the one that told me. And also like I don't have time to like take all that like skim off. We call it scum
Right.
in the
Right.
culinary world. So like this kind of it's the lazy way. It truly is the lazy way. And if like any of your followers have questions about things like that or anything like that, like I always say, please don't hesitate to DM me. I absolutely love helping people. It's like my passion before cooking is helping and
Yeah.
educating. And Jill knows that whenever I do an Insta story, I always say, "Would you guys want me to do this?" And like,
Right.
I create my social media based on what my readers want.
Which
So
is
I
great.
would love to. I mean, it works sometimes. That's what
Yeah. Oh, you do such a great job, and your kiddos are in the kitchen cooking with you, which is great. Just setting the bar for kids out there to start cooking. I taught my 5 kids how to cook very early. I was like, no way am I going to be in this kitchen
Well, you have an
24/7.
army, Jill.
Yeah, yes. And they're all great cooks. My boys cook for their girlfriends and cook these elaborate meals. And it's just amazing what you can teach at home and then send them out into the real world and watch them just flourish and stay healthy. So, Mila,
Bravo.
thank you so much again for joining me today. I'm so excited for the listeners to listen to this and really get on board with meal prepping because it is just such a great way to eat. So thank you again. And until next time, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.